Hi, good afternoon. I hope the rain isn't too loud here. It's really raining like crazy, and I have a steel roof there outside, and it makes a lot of racket. So I hope it's not going to be too loud. Welcome. Thanks for watching today. If you're watching live, say hi. I always want to know who's there so I don't feel like I'm talking into the void. And say hi also on the replay. Say hashtag replay or something. That actually helps a lot to, you know how Facebook works, like it bumps the video back up so that people who are looking for the replay can find it more easily without having to scroll through other stuff in our feed. So welcome. I wanted to talk today about how to keep your kids in your orbit. And I really like that metaphor. I think it's a really good metaphor because you are, in many ways, like the center of their universe, whether you know it or not. This is a real, true biological directive. And whether they're orbiting close to you or far away from you, you are still an attractor influence. You still have a power about you that keeps them wanting to be somehow in your sphere of influence. They do want to be to feel connected to you all the time, even when they're not with you. And so we need to help that along because, like, nature didn't really lay a foundation for us in terms of how to do divorce and separation and how to separate kids from the parents that they want to be connected to. We don't have a great model for that. We don't have any heritage of that as a species. So we have to develop the tools and the strategies for optimizing this natural urge of the kids to feel connected with you. And they feel better when they're connected with you. So let's talk about how to do that, okay? The other thing about orbit that I think is really important to know, I'm reading a book right now. It's not a new book. It's like 35 years old. It's called Power versus Force. Highly recommended by David R. Dawkins. And it's really about the difference between power and force and how power wins every single time, no matter how strong the force is, because force by nature requires something to push against. Force is always in opposition. Force is always forcing in some way, and power is just standing there being powerful. And if you can stand in your own power as a parent, you can easily overcome any kind of force from the outside that is trying to pull your kids away from you. I'm being metaphorical here, but it's really true that you already have this power as a parent, and we're just going to add some tools and some strategies for maximizing that power. Okay. So David Dawkins in his book talks about the power of a high energy attractor versus a low energy attractor. And a high energy attractor is going to move you more in the direction of your highest good. And a low energy attractor is going to attract you away from things that are in your highest good. So, of course, you want to be, as much as possible, a high energy attractor for your kids. And that involves increasing your own high energy as a person. That's about being connected to your values. That's about staying connected and demonstrating your integrity as much as possible. That's about trying to achieve your own potential and trying to open up your idea of what your potential could be as a person. Those kind of things, those personal development things, are increasing your power as a high energy attractor for your kids. Those things are going to make you more attractive and more likely to keep your kids orbiting closely around you instead of orbiting far away from you. So let's talk about some things, okay? There are things that you can do to stay connected to your kids while they're with you. In other words, as a preparation that you do when they're with you, so that they're more prepared for being away from you. And there are things that you do when they're with their mom to stay connected to them. So we'll start with what you can do in your own home to lay the groundwork for the kind of connection that you want to keep all the time with your kids, okay? The first thing I'm going to suggest is adding in more routine, more rhythm, more reliability, more ritual, where there's all these R words that are really good to describe more or less the same thing. Things that are routine, things happen the same way all the time in your home, that are attached to times of day or that are attached to habits that you have, whatever they might be. The more you can do things the same all the time, the more you're increasing a subliminal feeling of safety in your home. And a safe place is very attractive for kids because, in their animal brain, in their reptile brain, the fight and flight animal part of your brain, kids are not prepared to take care of themselves in the world until at least middle teenagehood, and for many until they're into their 20s, right? They don't feel emotionally, psychologically ready to have responsibility for their own safety in the world. So things like routine and rhythm are extremely calming, and they feel very secure. This has to do with why babies like to be rocked. There's a rhythm of it that is calming. And so I mentioned a lot of ways to add more rhythm into your household in the little handout that I have called Restorative Parenting. If you haven't got that yet, it's free, and I'll put the link at the end of this, and you can have some things to think about and maybe start doing in your own home. The second thing I would add in at your house to prepare your kids to stay connected with you when they're not with you is doing special time. Special time is a really, really important practice, I think, for every parent to know, because it is so powerful in terms of connecting with your kids. Special time involves announcing in advance that the special time is going to happen. And this is like, you might call it quality time, but it's probably very different from whatever you're already doing as quality time. It can be really short, but the features are that you announce it beforehand, you set a timer, so a bell or an alarm or something's going to go off at the end. You can use a kitchen timer, an egg timer. Of course, you have a timer on your phone. Start with 5 minutes, because the third thing that you have to do is make this you are completely connected, and your attention is focused only on your child, and nothing is allowed to interfere. There are no interruptions allowed in special time. You have to make sure that the other kids are taken care of and that they know that you're not to be interrupted. If the phone rings, you have to let it go to the answering machine. Okay, so it's just 5 minutes of real connection where your child is the most important thing in the world to you for that period of time. Okay, that nothing else is allowed to interfere with this special moment. And the fourth thing is that you have to only do what your child wants to do. It is completely directed. The play or the interaction is completely directed by the child. And if they want to jerk your chain for 5 minutes, you're going to have to let them do that. They might want to make you do things that are silly. They might want to laugh at you. Doesn't matter what it is. It's their time with you, and they get to choose which kind of interaction they're going to have. This is an extremely powerful practice I can't tell you the difference that this has made in people's lives who I've worked with and who I've also read about online. This comes from a website called handinhandparenting.org. I'll put the link there afterwards for you. The founder of Hand in Hand Parenting, her name is Patty Wipfler, and she's written a book. If you prefer books to researching online, her book is called Listen, and it's phenomenal. Her organization has helped over 1 million families already, over 40 years. So they have some fantastic data to draw on. And my experience with this is that it's completely transformative. 5, 10, 15 minutes of this kind of dedicated one-on-one time where you're just completely focused on the child and nothing is allowed to interfere. It's incredibly healing practice. So that's the second thing that I would be doing. And I would make a point of doing special time sometime in the day when they are going to leave to go to mom's house. So it doesn't matter if you have the kids almost all the time or if you only see them every other weekend or once in a blue moon. These are the things that are going to help to maintain the connection when they're not with you. Number 3, make your home a place that feels safe for them to love you and their mom. Because when families get divorced, when parents get divorced, the kids lose any possibility of loving both their parents in the same place at the same time. It might sound weird, but that's really true. You know, that at your house, you don't really want to hear them talking about mom. You don't want to hear them praising her. You don't want to hear them talk about how her cooking is better or her Christmas presents are nicer or, you know, that they like sleeping in her house more than yours or whatever. When they're telling you those things, they're just expressing love for their mom. And it's mostly not meant as any kind of criticism of you, but they're testing the waters to see whether it's allowed, to see how you'll receive it. And it's for sure that mom is not keen to hear them talk about what a nice time they had at your house and all the great things that they did there. So it's an extremely fracturing experience of life to not be able to feel whole and love both your parents at the same time. And if you can do that at your house, that is an unbelievably powerful statement. And it's going to make it a place that they long to be and that they're anxious to come back to, because that's a really, really valuable commodity. That's a small piece of real estate that you're offering them that they don't get anywhere else. Number 4 thing that you can do to help maintain the connection between you when you're not there is to learn something together or to engage in some kind of ongoing project. So something that I do with my daughter from time to time to keep us connected is we do a giant crossword together, and we'll get on a FaceTime call and we each have our big crossword taped together and plotted out and all the clues, and we hang out and do that. And it's a great way for us to spend time together when we're not actually together. So in the same way, it can be something that they look forward to completing when they come back to your house, if that's the way it's going to be. But it's something that stays in the air between you, that you're looking forward to doing together. You can learn to play chess together. You can start a big puzzle or put together a model. But something that is going to take some time to complete and that you get to work on it a little or a lot every time that you're together with each other. For older kids, you might even consider some kind of online gaming situation. I'm not a huge fan of more gaming, but you have to go to where the kids are, especially for teenagers. You have to show your willingness to show up where they like to be. And, for kids, for teens, especially for boys, I guess I would say, the gaming world is a place that they love to be. And so I think it's okay to say that you could take advantage of that to grow a better contact with your child when that's the purpose of it. The purpose is not that, you're trying to avoid having different kind of interactions with them. But if the purpose is as a, uh, this is what you can get from them now, and it's better than nothing, then it really is better than nothing. The fifth thing, I mean, there are lots. I'm not going to stay on here for hours today, but the fifth thing I'm going to talk about today is teaching them how to solve problems, teaching them how to use critical thinking. That is something that I've had interesting experience with, how that keeps me connected, even to my stepkids, which is very interesting. My stepson used to have the habit of every evening, he lived here with us full time from the age of 13, I guess. And previous to 13, he had been very, very much mama's boy, in the sense of being her supporter, being her caregiver, being on her team, being very hard on dad, and then just suddenly, had a kind of epiphany and realized that he had it all backwards, and that he really wanted to be with dad. And of course, it was also an age where, boys want to have more exposure to their dad. Of course they do, as they're growing up. So he came to live here with us when he was 13, but we get along really well. And he enjoyed coming to talk to me at bedtime. So like when he was in his pajamas, getting ready to go to bed, he would come downstairs. My office is next to the kitchen. And he would stand in the door of my office and kind of unpack his day for me. It became a ritual that really every night, that was something that he liked to do. And we would talk about his problems, and I would help him figure out how to solve them. I wasn't giving him answers to things. I was teaching him how to think about stuff. And I can't say that at the time, I wasn't saying, oh, let me apply this technique to him. It just felt like the right thing to do, to help him in his development by showing him how to think about things. So I'm talking about, what I wanted to say first is that he still tells me, even now, he's been moved out because he's at university. He's been gone from here for 4 years, living on his own. But he still says from time to time, I had this problem and I wasn't sure what to do. And then the Tracy bubble popped up in the back of my head and said, Matt, think about it this way, So that's really cool for me to hear. But that keeps us connected, even when we're not together, because I've become a little voice in the back of his head that reminds him to apply certain aspects of critical thinking. And I'm really happy with having made that contribution. So the way to do this is to engage them in, thinking, how can you understand this situation better? Whenever there's a problem or a puzzle or something they can't figure out, some kind of frustration they're trying to manage, how could you understand this better? How can we help you to have a bigger context for this? Or what are all your options? Let's look at what all the options are. What happens if you do nothing? What happens if you choose this? How about if you choose that? What haven't we thought of yet? Making a list of pros and cons. I'm always big about making the kids do that. List out the pros and cons. Sometimes you have to help them to conceive of what the pros and cons are, but it's a really great exercise of teaching them to be objective and to think critically. And this is going to have a big payday for you, because you are gently, slowly, subtly teaching them to think critically about what they hear from their mom. In the case that it's sort of, let's say, deliberately trying to undermine your position in some way, you're teaching them to ask themselves questions and to look for answers around themselves, how to research, or to look for answers inside themselves too. Asking, what's the worst thing that could happen if you do this or you do that? And having them play out their fears a little bit with you is a great exercise, because it's going to help them to do that for themselves later on, to say, What am I so afraid of here? What's the worst thing that could happen? How could I deal with it if this happens? So I hope that's clear. Those are 5 things that you can do in your home. And then there are a few things that you can do to maintain contact when your kids are in the other home. One thing I think is really important is to set up regular phone calls, FaceTime, texts, emails, whatever it might be. But again, the rhythm and the reliability of it is really important to making that happen. So there is nothing about the concept of custody that involves the right to keep your child away from their other parent. There is nothing about even full permanent physical custody, whatever you might want to call it. Custody always involves access to the other parent, even if it's supervised access. There's always a piece of the concept of custody involves positive access with the other parent. So I strongly encourage you to make regular times to talk with your kids, whether it's one phone call a week and one FaceTime, or every day I'm going to send a text message at lunchtime or at bedtime, whatever it might be. I think it's really important to maintain that. I can tell you that my husband played a kind of weird game, I guess you would call it, with his kids from the time that he separated from their mom. Well, it had been going on long before, because he was living during the week far away from them and going home on the weekends, but he would phone twice every day. He talked to his kids twice every day. And then after he got separated, he was phoning every day at dinner time or after in the early evening. And he would call and the phone would ring through to the answering machine. Nobody would answer. This was back in the days of a house phone. So the phone was ringing and there were people there. And then he would call again, like right away afterwards. And again, it would ring all the way to the answering machine. And then if he dialed a third time, then at the third or fourth ring, somebody would pick up the phone. And then he would have his regular chat with the kids. And that went on every night for years, maybe 5 years that lasted. So, and they were always actually happy to talk to him. But there was stuff going on at the other end where mom was sort of engaging them in this game of not answering and trying to see who was gonna give in and answer the phone. So it had nothing to do with the kids not wanting to talk to him. And the important thing is to just keep the conversation happening, to stay connected. Even if they don't ever reply, you can't discount how important it is for them to know that you are reaching out to talk to them. I did some research on adults who had been alienated from one of their parents in their childhood. And one woman spoke to me and said that her parents separated when she was a teenager. She was really mad at her dad because she kind of got onto mom's side and believed that the dad was responsible for the end of their marriage and the breakup of her family. She was really mad at him. She didn't want to talk to him. She said, my dad called me every week for 4 years and I never picked up the phone. And she said, when he finally stopped calling, it broke my heart. Can you imagine? And I can tell you that I see it even in my own family, that bio mom has been held at a great distance. Let's say the kids are in a very, very distant orbit from her at the moment. They don't want to talk to her, and yet they feel very hurt when she doesn't reach out on special occasions. So, however great the distance, there is a meaning to the kids seeing you reaching out. That is a contact that they are longing for. So if you can get into your high energy attractor position and keep your ego out of it and just be someone who is trying to give your children what they need, no matter what you're getting back from them, because parenting, as you already know this, I don't have to tell you, parenting is a one-way street. Until you get to be an elderly person who needs to be taken care of, it's about finding all the creative ways you can to give your kids what they need, so that even if they're not responding and you feel really hurt and rejected, which anybody would. I'm not going to say that it was an easy ride for my husband. It was excruciatingly difficult. But he chose to believe that it was important to them that the phone would ring every night. And it was important to them. They can say it now that they're older. Okay. So that's the first thing. Regular phone calls, FaceTime, texts, emails, whatever it might be. Second thing, sending snail mail, like real mail with a postage stamp on it. If you go for 2 weeks without seeing your kids, there's no reason that they can't be receiving something in the mailbox from you in between. That can be a postcard. It can be a funny greeting card. It can be a riddle that they have to solve. It can be a funny photo of you that you get printed, or photos of them from the last time they were with you, right? Sending something with a stamp that goes to the mailbox is a great way of staying in touch. So even if it takes a week to get there, if you put it in the mail the day after they leave, they're going to get it before you see them again, probably. The third thing is the one that I love the most, and I call this sending a heart message. I used to do this with my daughter. A heart message is a message that you send from your heart. And kids are quite open to the idea that you can send a secret message with your heart. And we used to practice sitting on the, side by side on the sofa or across the room from each other. And I would say, I'm going to send you a heart message now. And I would close my eyes and send a message. And I would say, did you get it? And she would say, yeah, I got it. I said, the message was, I love you. Is that the same message you got? So if you have little kids, obviously, I would say under maybe age 10, I think they would go for that. I think they would go for the idea of establishing a way to communicate with you that doesn't require a telephone. It's like magic between a dad and his kids. There's a magic kind of communication where you don't even need any words. You don't need the phone. You don't need anything special. You can do it just with your heart. And it wouldn't be that difficult to set up in your home the routine of sending a heart message every night at bedtime. And that way you can say every night when you go to bed, I'm going to be sending you a heart message, and you can send one back. I think that would be a lovely way to maintain connection when your kids aren't there. So those are just a few ideas. Of course, I hope that there's one or two at least in that bunch that you can adapt to your own household, okay? To just to crank up this effect, this high energy attractor effect that you have already with your kids, and to keep them in a closer orbit, to keep them feeling that you are always present in their lives, even when they're not sleeping under your roof. Okay? So thanks for watching today. I just want to say that I have 3 spots left for taking coaching clients who want to start straight away before Christmas. I could start 3 more clients before Christmas, whether you want to meet weekly or every other week, but we can work on your parenting relationship issues. We can work on overcoming parental alienation without losing your shirt, without losing your marbles, and get to where you want to be so that you can have a relaxed, meaningful, effortless, important relationship with your kids. And to be an effective parent with your kids, to really be able to leave your mark, to be able to make the impact that you want, because that's what parenting is all about. That's the satisfaction of it. So that's what I would love to work on with you. If you are anxious to start before Christmas, just send me a personal message and we can set up a phone call and take it from there. Okay? So take care, everybody. I'll probably talk to you again before Christmas. All right. Bye.